Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to CocoaHeads for June, to our Beyond WWDC special event. Hey, everyone in the back. Thank you. Yeah, welcome. It's a pretty special event tonight. I think you'll all see why as we get started, but thank you for coming, and we hope you enjoy it. So to get started, as always, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, and pay my respects to elders, both past and present. A little bit of housekeeping as usual, but I'll keep it short because we've got a pretty packed night. So hey, I'm Zach, I'm one of the hosts, and we've also got Nikki helping out. He's at the front here. Reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns. A huge thank you to our sponsors this month, to Billu, who help with our costs, and to Safety Culture, obviously, for the venue that we're all standing in. I think you'll agree it's a great venue. So a big thank you to both of these sponsors. A reminder that CocoaHeads has a code of conduct and that all our events are governed by the code of conduct, and this applies to both in-person and online interactions. You can read the policy in full on the website. The URL's on the slide behind me, but it boils down to 3 key points, and they are to be respectful, be inclusive, and to be aware. If there's any concerns about the code of conduct, please see Nikki or myself, and we'd be happy to help you address any issues. A reminder that the Sydney CocoaHeads community has a Slack group, which you can join and be part of. We have a dedicated meetup channel for nights like tonight, but there's also just general chatter throughout the month. So you're welcome to join. The URL is on the slide behind me. Huge welcome to anyone attending CocoaHeads for the first time. Can I have a show of hands if it's your first time at a CocoaHeads? Big welcome, rounds of applause, everyone. Welcome. We hope you enjoy, and we hope to see you in future months as well. A little bit about some other groups that you might enjoy. If you like what you see here tonight, a reminder that Melbourne CocoaHeads do a similar thing. So they run their meetup, their CocoaHeads meetup on the 2nd Thursday of the month. We run ours on the 3rd. It's great fun. They also have a great live streaming capabilities, so you can watch online if you're in Sydney or wherever else in the world. And I've been holding out to put this slide on for a few months, but in-person conferences are back, and I think this is very exciting. So yeah, round of applause. So as everyone in this room would know, WWDC had a great in-person event earlier this month, but I've also got a couple of other conferences I'd like to call out. So NS Spain is happening on the 15th and 16th of September in Spain. Tickets are available now, and I believe they're still accepting calls for presenters. So if you're interested, definitely check out NS Spain. It looks very cool. And there's also 360 iDev, which is happening in the United States in late August. Tickets are available now. A little bit more information about 360 iDev. They've actually provided me with some special codes for CocoaHeads attendees. So if you're interested in attending and you're able to pay your own way, there's a 15% off code there. So the code is Swift Community. But also, this is very exciting. They've given 2 tickets to Sydney CocoaHeads. So they can go to members of our community who would like to attend free of charge. So if you're interested, and they're good for both online or in person, please come and see me. Look, if you're interested and there's only 2 people who are interested, you're going to get a ticket. If there's more than 2, we'll figure out a way to distribute those. But if you're considering attending, yeah, please come and talk to me, send me a message, whatever, and we'll hopefully be able to hook you up with a ticket. It's a very cool offer, and we thank them for that. And quickly looking ahead to next month, we'll be back on the 21st of July. We'll be back at the Billu offices in the CBD. We have a couple of talks, I think, for next month, so we're looking pretty good there. But if you're interested in talking sort of August onwards, please come and see me. Happy if you want to run ideas by me, or if you just have an idea for a talk that's fully fleshed, we can put you in the schedule, and we'd love to have you talk. Now, I've mentioned this the last couple of months, but we've also stumbled upon some old Apple gear, which we're going to sort of have a charity auction for, which is basically you get some gear in exchange for donating to a charity. Lifehouse is the particular charity that we're raising funds for. It was meant to be this month, but we are pretty jam-packed this month. So I've actually pushed this to next month. I'll be bringing the gear along at the July meetup, and we'll find a way to get rid of the gear and make some donation to charity. So if you're interested, there's a jacket, there's a t-shirt, a binder, a tote bag, and some pins and stuff like that. So stay tuned for that next month. It's all pretty cool. All right, now on to the exciting bits and the reasons that we're all here. Tonight's schedule. So we started with housekeeping. That's this. I'm almost at the end, I promise. Next up, we have a panel discussion. We have a very exciting group of panelists. We're going to talk about all things WWDC, early reactions, thoughts on frameworks, announcements, etc. Very much looking forward to that. Following that, there'll be a short break, and then we'll get stuck into some of the special talks. So our first talk is by Procreate, winners of an Apple Design Award, and we also have another Apple Design Award winner tonight joining by video stream from Wylde Flowers. So we're very lucky in Australia to have had 2 Apple Design Award winners this year. It's very cool. And we'll hear some talks from them about how they came to win their ADA, and also offer an opportunity to ask any questions. And then finally, we'll round out the night with a panel discussion from Apple Technology Evangelism. So some of you will have had the opportunity to submit questions ahead of time. We're going to have some of those answered, as well as just sort of talk through some of the technologies that were announced at WWDC. It should be very cool. So as you can see, it's a huge meetup. We've probably got about 2 meetups worth of content in the one night. So without further ado, let's get stuck into the panel. If I can invite our panelists up here, give them a round of applause. Take your seats. Okay, so welcome to the panel. We'll start with some quick intros. So if everyone could just go through your name and maybe one thing about you or where you work, whatever you want to say.
Hey, I'm Daniel. I work at Blue, and one thing about me is I'm fluent in Japanese. Here you go.
Hello, I'm Mike, and I work at Strong on iOS and watchOS.
Hi, I'm Ricardo. I work currently at iOS, learning a little bit more of Go and the backend and safety culture.
Hey everybody, you've all met me hopefully. My name is Enrico, and I'm at Safety Culture. I'm mainly doing Swift and Golang.
Hello everyone, I'm Christian and I also work at Blue, and a fun fact about me is that I don't know Japanese.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. All right, so we'll get stuck into the first question. So what was the highlight of this year's WWDC? Firstly, as a developer, and then secondly, as a user. Start with Dan.
As a consumer, I really like the home screen. The lock screen. I think it's going to be really nice with the widgets there and the customizations that you can do. Also, I really like the image popping above the lock on the lock screen. Yep, and also the live action widgets on there. It's gonna be really nice, and like I hate going into the actual home screen, so it's gonna be really awesome. As a developer, I'm a big fan of the weather kit and also Swift charts. I think it's gonna be a really powerful tool when I can ever use it. So pass it over to you, Mike.
Thank you. So as a user, I install iOS 15 and I'm super pumped about the widgets and the new home screen. So hopefully Apple will announce a new iPhone 14 with AOD display. So that's going to be super cool. And as a developer, I'm really excited about the new Swift navigation, because it's finally we can finally see how we can implement very flexible navigation that enables us with deep links, with custom moves to different screens. So that's pretty cool. But the biggest surprise to me was that you can finally implement SwiftUI inside UI Kit, like very legit, by adding SwiftUI views to collection cells. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
I think as a user, the thing that impressed me the most or interested me the most was live text, the ability to get text from even a still video frame from a video, and the assistive technologies like using to get text captions from a video conference. And as a developer, I think that the enhanced focus on the iPad experience, on getting a more desktop-like experience in iPad, really impressed me.
Yeah, Stage Manager is really interesting. And I am still wondering which one came first, Stage Manager for iPad or Mac? Where would they write the code first? That will be an interesting question to the Apple Tech Evangelist later, maybe. I like Stage Manager. I feel like there's so many ways to manage Windows on a Mac. If you ever seen my laptop, I have like 500 windows open at the same time. So hopefully that will bring some order to the chaos on my laptop. As a developer, I agree with you that it's amazing they bring out SwiftUI to UI Kit, and makes it way easier for us developers to write SwiftUI. Yeah, that's really good to see, and hopefully we'll see more next year.
I think for me, I'm gonna, obviously the home screen and widgets is a pretty big thing this year. For me, I don't necessarily care too much about the widgets yet, but I'm gonna be excited to see what people actually do with them. I'm more interested in just being able to customize your lock screen, and especially combined with focus modes and focus filters. It's gonna be really cool to sort of create like a home profile or work profile or in that way, and that's pretty cool. And as a developer, I'm gonna second Swift charts or SwiftUI charts. Obviously, very excited, especially for me because I use them heavily. But I'm also really interested into the package plugins, implementing your tool chain closer, and Xcode Cloud, which I've been part of the beta of since last year, and I have not yet tried it. Maybe there's an evangelist that can help me out there.
It's cheap as well. Xcode Cloud. It's cheaper than.
For now.
For now. Yeah. Thank you. Some great answers to kick us off. So a couple of you mentioned Swift charts. So I was wondering, how do you do charting in your applications at the moment? And sort of when do you anticipate, if ever, a move to something like Swift charts? Again, we'll start with Dan.
At the moment, I actually don't have any charts in the current app that I'm working on, but in the past, I've had to actually write some bar graphs and some line charts, and they've never been super fun to they've been fun to implement, but they've always not had the support for animations or accessibility like Swift charts has. Hopefully, maybe I'll work on something in the future and get to use Swift charts a bit more.
Yeah, so charts are also very exciting to me, but the only problem is that they're, I think, from iOS 16 and macOS Ventura. So this is not an option for many apps for some time. But in our app, we utilize Swift charts, which is just an open source library, but it's only for iOS and for macOS, but we also need to use that for watchOS, and that's where we just draw in core graphics into a bitmap and then render it to UI image. So that's the only option. But Swift charts enables developers to animate changes very easily. So that's really nice to visualize like trends and changes, because that's something that users expect to see in apps in 2022. So hopefully I'm gonna be able to bump the target to iOS 16 very soon. But until that, I'm gonna keep an eye on the other developers, what they're gonna do with it.
Well, I think that one of the main obstacles to implementing charts with the new technology in our applications is that we also have to support Android and the web. And usually we would come up with a web view and implement the chart using some JavaScript technology library, and then use all of the same chart in the 3 platforms and lose all of the extra functionality that Apple offers. So I think that one of the things that if I want to get to use charts in my app is to convince the designers to go and offer something better in iOS, in iPhone and iPad.
I think it's interesting that we got Swift charts on the year where Bitcoin and crypto and other stocks just came down like drastically. I feel like we can visualize that very well with Swift charts. So that's one application we can take a look at. They must have timed it, right? So they must have been holding it back since 2020 or something. But anyway, I agree with Ricardo that most of the charts these days, we still need to show it to the other platforms like Android and so on. So I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic, because I've seen other frameworks as well that are available on the web, like MapKit and the Weather Kit that's newly announced. If Swift Charts is also on the web and other platform, that would be a fantastic thing as well next year.
It's an interesting conspiracy you've got there. I think for me, I've got 2 indie apps, and they're both finance apps. So coming back to your point, they use graphs and charts to visualize things a lot, and it's a great tool. For now, I think it's pretty easy already in Swift UI to get going quickly with some basic shapes and charts and things. But I think what you get from Swift UI charts now is all the extra, like all the grids and the values and things that change and animate and most likely accessibility too. So I think it's a great thing for your toolbox. Obviously, it is iOS 16 only, so it's gonna take a while to use it, but also luckily people are very quick to update. So I don't think it's gonna take too long time. So I'm very excited about that.
Cool, thanks. Fortunately, I was actually kind of surprised. No one said, "Oh, we're not using Swift UI," and we have to get over that hurdle first. So that's good to know. But I did want to ask, and we'll start with Christian this time and go in reverse order. What's the mix of UIKit versus Swift UI in your current work projects or even personal projects? And does this year's release change that? Like, for example, if you haven't been using Swift UI, is it now good enough to use? So Christian?
Yeah, so I use both. Work projects have pretty much only been UIKit so far, even though we're always wanting to push a little bit of Swift UI into it. It's something new. Why wouldn't you? For my own apps, they are all written in Swift UI. And yeah, I think from iOS 14, I think it's production ready. It's the eternal question. I think from iOS 13, you could see it was still new and fresh, and there was a lot of things you couldn't quite do. And luckily, it was easy to incorporate some UIKit things as well. It's nice to see that it's really starting to mature. And I think Apple has spent the past 1 or 2 years not focusing too much on adding a lot of new features, but rather catching up to UIKit and making everything sort of available on both platforms. So that's great to see. So I mix it a lot, but it gets quite confusing. But I think it's important still to know both.
Yeah, I did a poll on my work Slack the other day, this week, about how many have merged Swift UI to master. And I phrased the question carefully so that I know that this is in production. So if you go iAuditor app right now from Safety Culture, there are actually Swift UI screens over there. So I think the split is around 50-50 now. 50% of engineers have used Swift UI on master. Then they've merged their code. I haven't, but if everything goes well, hopefully I'll merge something to master with Swift UI by the end of the year. And I think it's picking up really fast now, and Apple gives so much support. So I'm happy to see what we've got this WWDC.
Well, one of the things that made at least my life easier with Swift UI is that because we were supporting iOS 12 until only a few months ago, when I got to use Swift UI, I was able to skip the initial teething pains of using the SwiftUI 1.0, and it has been a pleasant experience to use. I still need to get more used to all of the controls and ways of doing things in a declarative way, but so far it's looking good.
Yeah, so in terms of mixing SwiftUI and UIKit, I just wanted to point out something that Christian said is about target and Swift charts, and that you can already implement some of the cool stuff that Apple is providing by using the basic blocks from SwiftUI, for instance, right? So you can, right now, you can just start doing some simple charts, or you can go on GitHub, and I think there are at least few libraries that can give you some kind of good charts for free. But the thing is that I'm most excited, I think, from the new things in SwiftUI 4 or 3, I don't remember, is the navigation. But again, it's from iOS 16. But last week, I saw on GitHub again that somebody pushed repository or SPM package that is backwards compatible and uses almost the same API as Path or Swift navigation. I'm not sure how it's called right now, but the thing is that you can start using it now, and later, if you bump the appropriate version as it's iOS 16 or Ventura or watchOS 9, you can swap it to the native solution. That's pretty cool. So in our project, we're in the middle of a big rewrite, and I know big rewrites usually ends up pretty bad, but hopefully this time is going to be better. But for Watch, the app is completely SwiftUI because switching from WatchKit to UIKit is a no-brainer, I think, for anybody who had a chance to work on watchOS. On iOS, we actually tested almost every single possible APIs because we were trying to mix lists, we were trying to mix vGrids, scroll view, VStack, any option that we had. And we also embedding UI hosting controller inside collection view cells, and that it's actually working okay. But of course, if you want to get the smooth performance, it might be a little bit laggy, because I'm not sure if, because with each DQ, you're embedding new hosting controllers, so it's probably not very efficient. So yeah, I would say right now iOS is 80% SwiftUI, and only the remaining parts are the complex transitions or collection views, and that is not possible in SwiftUI 1 or 2. But right now we have layout component, but again, it's from iOS 16. But that's already a big step up in terms of mixing SwiftUI with UIKit.
Yeah, my current work project mostly has like 95% is UIKit, and it targets minimum 13. So run into some of the issues of maturity with SwiftUI and some of the conditionals, like is available 14, else do this, particularly with, like, say, list, where the separator styles were a bit harder and you had to target, say, the table view itself on 13. So we're picking our battles with SwiftUI at the moment, but I'm hoping soon we're going to drop 13 and go to 14 and see more SwiftUI being written. Pretty much all my side projects are all SwiftUI, and I like dabbling in that, so it's always a good time.
Nice, thanks. That's actually very interesting. So I wanted to ask, if your project has a widget, are you looking at bringing it to the lock screen, either as a lock screen widget or a complication? And if not, can you tell me an app that you hope does start supporting lock screen complications? We'll start with Christian again.
I'll have to think of the last one. I have recently added a widget for one of my apps, and the other one is going to get one as well. Obviously, time is always a constraint, so bear with me. Yeah, so for my apps, I like the lock screen widgets, but unfortunately, or so far, they're quite small, and I feel like the kind of widgets that I would have doesn't suit that size well. It doesn't really convey important information in that size, or at least not one that I figured out yet. And I think that's an important consideration to do as well, that not every new technology might fit what you want to do. So there's not always a point to just rush in trying something new just for the sake of it. That's usually, in my experience, a bad idea. So yeah, is there an app that I wish would bring a widget? I don't know. I'll think about it.
Yeah, this is a tough question. I think you're right that we shouldn't put widget on every single app that we have. Like, there's no point. When I first got an Apple Watch, I did try to download like 50 apps and try to show my bank balance on here and show whatever it is, like stock price and so on my watch. And I ended up, like, after a few months, overload of information. So I think this is not necessary for all app developers. I think the most important is if you have a weather app or if you have a timer app, those two are like one of the top 10 of what you should add as a widget, I think. So, and weather app, I am just surprised sometimes by how many people use. So personally, I use like a few, and I do want to know something like UV index, for example, which people don't usually see. So yeah, if you have a weather app, you should add it to the widget lock screen.
Yeah, no, I'm going to skip that one. What Enrico said.
Okay. So yeah, definitely widgets. They're not you don't need to push for widgets if you don't have a use case. So that's a good point. But definitely, I think for any app that has WatchOS companion, this app should also have a widget on lock screen. That's no brainer, I think. So yeah, definitely I can see a lot of good use cases for that, and hopefully iPhone 13 with AOD display, that's gonna merge watch and iPhone even better, and more developers will feel the urge to develop a widget. But for our app, definitely we're gonna use that because we also have WatchOS app, we have widgets, sorry, we have complications. So it's fairly easy to transition to widgets on iOS, and users will definitely appreciate that. You can see timers, you can see schedules, all that data that it's that you're looking for, but you don't want to go into the app, and so you can save those few precious seconds of your life.
Yeah, my current project actually doesn't have any widgets. However, maybe back in February or March, there was a hackathon that was ran, and so I explored some of the ways we could use widgets. So it's like a fashion retailer app that I'm working on, and maybe shipping or something on the widgets. So maybe bringing that to the lock screen would be really nice. Now maybe I use an app called Habits to track my habits. I use the widget quite often. It'd be nice maybe to have some shapes or something that could be really small on the lock screen.
Awesome, thank you. I'm now going to turn it over to the audience. We've still got a couple of questions to go, but does anyone have any questions for the panel? It can be a generic question for everyone or for a specific panelist. Nikki's got the mic. He's going to walk around. We'll open it up.
Hello, everyone. I have a question about Xcode. So nobody mentioned Xcode, but we use it every day. So is there anything you particularly like about the new version of Xcode? Or like, do you want to see something changed in next WWDC for the Xcode?
I particularly like the new SwiftUI preview variants. It makes it really easy to visualize the light and dark mode, all this accessibility, like the dynamic type fonts. And you can also combining with Canvas device settings, which makes it really nice and easy just to visualize what you're working on. So I'm really excited about that.
One thing that I am very excited in Xcode 14, it's the Xcode plugins, to be able to create my own code to modify the behavior of Xcode. And I have several ideas of things that I want Xcode to do for me. And I think that that will be brilliant. Things that I would like Xcode to improve, I think that I would like a browser for the San Francisco symbols to be in the Xcode itself and not in a separate application.
I haven't downloaded the Xcode 14 beta, but I really hope they have made SPM better. That's one of the biggest pain points. And I also like the Xcode plugins. I walked through someone in the company on setting up his Xcode setup recently, a few weeks ago, and we just have like 15 steps where you have to do brew install, brew bundle, and then SwiftLint and so on. I feel like it's a bit too much sometimes. So I hope that Xcode plugin can move some of them, perhaps SwiftLint and things like that, into Xcode, so you don't have to do brew bundle and do all the other tools outside of Xcode.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we have mentioned Xcode maybe indirectly. But yeah, packages for sure. They've added, coming back to my other point, they've added a lot of, not a lot of new things, but a lot of like stability improvements and just general like nice to have things like the, you know, when you scroll a file, it shows the title of function up, and it's like, I don't know, it has a specific Apple title, but they like to be fancy with that. There's the new sort of build analyzer. You can sort of see what steps takes what amount of time. And we've had tools for all these kinds of things, but now it's sort of bundled in a nice package, and it looks really nice. And I think I'm happy with Xcode as it is now. I just wanted to not spend, you know, use 30 gigs of RAM, if that could be an option. Yeah. And there was one more thing that I forgot, but yeah, in short, I'm pretty happy with Xcode as it is. I just want them to focus on stability and build improvements and things like that.
I've got a question. How many of you here uses GitHub Copilot or used it? Yeah, I wonder. So if you don't know GitHub Copilot, it's like a product from GitHub that uses AI, so you can autocomplete some parts of your code. So if you do something like, if you write something like the function header, it can try to figure out what you want to write in the function itself. A question I want to ask you, if you know anyone from GitHub, obviously it's better. Is Xcode plugin going to be possible for GitHub to implement Copilot in Xcode? Because we've been using Visual Studio for Copilot. That's a question for either Apple or GitHub, I guess.
Maybe we can take that one on notice and address it in the panel later.
Yeah,
it's a really good question. I love it. Any other questions for the panel?
Yeah, I would like to ask if you have any suggestion to a beginner and a learner in iOS development. Yeah, thank you.
While you're all thinking, should I start? Find a project you want to build and build it. If it's a weather app, doesn't matter. Just find something you'll be interested in and sort of be motivated with to see through. You'll work out a way to do it. Like you'll find the right tutorials, you'll find the right people to help. It'll kind of happen, but I think you really need to be motivated and want to see it all the way through. I know personally, I struggled just following tutorials for the sake of doing tutorials. I kind of had to have something like an end goal in mind, and that really helped. And it's a little bit, you know, personal up to the individual, but that's kind of what worked for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll actually agree with that. I found myself tinkering around on a lot of side stuff, just seeing how things work and how things put together. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to put it on the App Store or anything. Just seeing how things work. And also think coming to meetups and meeting other developers who might have more experience and just networking in general and just asking questions. Also think hackathons are really nice to maybe get involved with, particularly since we're going back to in person. Yeah, that's me.
The question is if you want to be iOS developer or you just want to be developer in general, because it's a small distinction. But because I'm not sure, because there are many iOS developers in the venue, but I just wonder how many of them actually aimed for to become iOS developer and how it just happened, or they pivoted from different technology. But my point is that to just start to just try to find a problem that you have in your life. It can be just anything. If there is an app that that you're missing because your use case is quite niche, that's a pretty good candidate to just implement it in Swift Playgrounds. Or you can just ask your friends if they need something that's going to make their life easier. So that's also pretty good. But if you want to be let's say serious about becoming an iOS developer, you can set yourself a challenge or ask your developer friends that you're going to do one small app every week, and you can submit it on GitHub and ask for a code review, and they will gladly point out all the problems that there are in the app. Or if you want to be really hardcore, you can just submit it on Reddit, and people will definitely see what's wrong here. But this way you can improve your skills tenfold instead of just maybe lurking on forums or reading tutorials or reading books, even though those materials are still valuable. But if you're in this very initial phase, I think this is the best way to improve as a developer, as a creator in general, because maybe later you'll realize that you want to pivot into front end or maybe back end or embedded stuff. Yeah, it's a good start, but don't stress too much about becoming an iOS developer. Just start doing things, because in general, it's just programming.
All right. I think two pieces of advice. First, Stack Overflow is a great resource, but never copy something from Stack Overflow into your code without trying to really understand what's going on. Second, Playgrounds is your friend. Have a second Playgrounds window always open and try code there very quickly, and then incorporate it into your app in your main window.
Yeah, I agree with everyone here. There's a lot of ways to learn. It's up to you. Like, everyone's personality is different, but those are really, really amazing suggestions. Yeah, if you want to find us after the talk, we can chat as well.
That's some good answers. I want to give a reply that doesn't just speak to beginners, because I think we're all beginners still. It just depends what we're learning, right? Or where, in what stage of life and our career we are. So my advice is just to learn how you learn things best. Learn new things. Make yourself a challenge. Build something. Do it over. There's a great video from Paul Hudson in the community. He released a couple of days ago on YouTube called 8 Things I Wish I Knew 20 years ago or something like that. He gives some amazing advice for any person, really, not just the developer. Yeah, involve yourself in the community. I think Twitter is a great place to start if you're good with that, and come to more CocoaHeads.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. They were really great answers. The CocoaHeads one is a big one. But yeah, you're definitely in the right place, and I hope that was helpful. It's a great question. So one topic that really gets a lot of love at CocoaHeads and is very popular when we talk about it is accessibility. And I wanted to ask the panel very quickly, we'll go through one by one. What is your #1 accessibility tip? And Christian, we'll start with you since you're just talking.
Do it. I will elaborate a bit. I feel like it's often overlooked in some of the companies I've been with, even when you do something personally. It's kind of the last thing you think about if you even know about it at all. But it's also important to realize that I think from the CocoaHeads last month, there's like 30 or 40% of people in the world that has some sort of disability or things that make a device hard to use or impossible to use, even if it's not made properly. So that's like 30 or 40% of your potential users gone if you don't accommodate their needs. So I think it's really important. Do it and do it again.
Great answer. One thing that I have learned in the beginning of my career is never use something that's not meant to be used that way, another way. If it's called UI button, it's meant to be called a button, not a label, right? If it's a UI image view, it's meant to be used for image, not a label. So if you're using the class incorrectly, a lot of accessibility values would be lost very quickly. So use the classes as intended.
Well, one tip it's for accessibility is if you are going to translate your app to other languages, don't assume practically anything. Texts will be very long in other languages, such as German or Spanish. Russian is also a big one. Right to left, if you're going to write for the Arabic community or for other languages where it's read from left to right, from right to left. Just follow Apple's advice. Don't go fancy on the layout, and you will be fine. Think accessibility from the start. Don't think that it's something that you can put on top of your project at the very end when you decide, oh, let's put labels for the voiceover and all of that. No, start from the beginning and add a bit of time to get it right for people who don't have all of their abilities at the 100%.
Right. So to answer the question, I think the easiest way to enable your app to be accessibly friendly is just to do more UI with SwiftUI, because that's the way how Apple is envisioning the future of UI on Apple platforms, and it's accessibly very friendly. So if you have an element that is already in in UIKit, but it's not accessibly enabled, maybe it's a chance to just rewrite it to SwiftUI. Of course, it depends on your time and the plans and your team, but it's actually it's a good way to enable more users to use your app in a friendlier way. Because to be honest, last month there was a talk made by Samar Panache that we're working at Apple, and her talk was absolutely mind blowing, because most people are right that accessibility is about that many of us do have some sort of disability, but it's also about how people are seeing the world. Because for instance, I'm diagnosed with ADHD, and to me, many of the UI elements are not like going into multiple screens. It's very frustrating and losing temper very quickly. Plus, I started using some of the features from iOS, which is pointer control, which is also like it's almost like a mouse on iOS. So I have remote Bluetooth mouse, and I can use it on a treadmill, so I can read books. But to see text in the books, I need to change the size of the font. And unfortunately, even though my site is 2020, I cannot see the text clearly in some of the apps that provide books rentals from Sydney Library. But fortunately, on iOS 16, Apple revamped the Books app, and it's really, really good now. So you can easily change the fonts. So yeah, I think easiest answer is to just do more SwiftUI.
I think that's a lot of great answers so far. Particularly, I like to start early and start at least some basics like the dynamic type, dark mode, and voiceover just to get going. Very important. Like if you just do the voiceover by default, it might not sound right. So make sure to look at how the voiceover is being read. And also like to put myself in those shoes, like of somebody that might be disabled, or I might look at myself and say when I'm 70 and I'm like, well, how can I read that? Well, I'm setting myself up right now for my future self by supporting accessibility.
Cool, thanks all. Some very, very thoughtful answers, so thanks for that. We're up to the last question for the night, and that is there anything that you were hoping for at this year's WWDC that it didn't happen, or put another way, what are you hoping for next year? We'll start with Dan and we'll go down the panel.
Actually, I had a tough one with this. Actually, I'm really happy this year with everything that's come out. Sweet UI is getting a lot more stable, getting a lot more mature. So I'm really excited about that future there. But overall, I'm just generally pleased with the whole ecosystem. So don't have any complaints.
So to be honest, I was hoping for some sort of swift persistence because we're still with core data, and I started dabbling with async await and core data, and it's getting a little bit rough to me. So I was hoping for swift persistent, that it's async await friendly, that it's based on structs and all the goodies that Apple had provided over the past few years. And another thing that I hoped Apple would have announced was more integrations with the cloud, because they announced Xcode Cloud. So I was expecting for some sort of collab tool in Xcode. So you can have Xcode in the cloud, and you can do pair programming with your friend. And just as a joke, I was also hoping for privacy-friendly Copilot from Apple. So maybe that's going to be Xcode 15 or something.
MacBook Pro with M2 and no touch bar.
This is not really the content. I feel like I'm very happy as well with the content this year, but I'm hoping next year there is going to be more in person, like not just one day, but it's more people and more days, because I'd love to come as well if I've got a chance to. Hopefully next year, COVID will be all over and there can be like 5 times the amount of people again as usual.
I don't think there was anything I missed this year. I was happy to see that they focused more on just, making everything better instead of coming up with a big new thing. No, we didn't get a VR headset, and who really wants that yet? I don't know. I don't. No car yet. CarPlay was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. Yeah, so there wasn't anything I missed, but there's something that I was really surprised about, and I hope they'll do more of, is I think they did that shortly before WWDC, but they launched or opened their new Apple Developer Center, or whatever it was called, where it looks like it's like a training place where you can come in with your mates, experiment, learn some code, get some lessons. So to be honest, what I hope they'll do more of is obviously, free for all WWDC next year. Not going to happen. But more education. Like, why are we not having, we've got 1,000 Apple stores. Why don't they do training on Xcode or programming or Swift? Some of them do. I wish they would do more education for everyone, so we can get more developers and more diversity and more people into the community. So I'll end it with that.
Awesome. Thank you. Some really well thought out answers there. So that brings us to the end of the first segment of the night. A round of applause for the panel. I think you'll all agree they did a fabulous job. It was really well done. We're going to take a very quick 5-minute break now. Opportunity to go to the bathroom if you need to, grab another drink, whatever you need to do. But we'll be back here in 5 minutes to resume the rest of the night. Thank you, everyone. Oh, that's going well. I didn't want to stop that. If I didn't do another. Thanks, everyone. If you could start to take your seats, we'll begin the next part of the night. Thank you. Come on, everyone, if you could start taking your seats, please, so we can get started. People at the back.
Great. Hi, everyone. We might make a start again. My name is TC Chan. I work for Apple. I belong to the developer relations team. I'll start again. So, hi, everyone. My name is TC Chan. I belong to the Apple developer relations team. I look after Australia and New Zealand and are normally based here in Sydney. So, it's a pleasure to be here tonight to talk to you a little bit about the Apple Design Awards. So let me tell you what that is in case you're unfamiliar, but I'm sure you already know. So the Apple Design Award celebrates 12 of the best in class apps for design excellence every year. And these apps are chosen from all the way around the world. The world is a pretty big playing field, as you know. So if you look at the history of the Apple Design Awards, you can probably trace it all the way back to 1997, where it used to be referred to as the Human Interface Design Excellence. And the acronym for that is HIDE, H-I-D-E. So we changed the name. And in 2010, after the advent of the iPad, Australia brought home the first Apple Design Award. I'm not sure if you guys know what this is, but it should be familiar. It's by a company called Firemint in Melbourne, and the game was called Flight Control HD. Does anybody remember that? Seems so long ago, right? What a great implementation of multi-touch. And HD, do you remember why it's called HD? Because at that time, the thing to do was to call your iPad apps HD, right? Well, that went away. So this in the same year, Firemint won a second Apple Design Award as well. That was for Real Racing 2 for iPhone. And so this trend or this thing about collecting Apple Design Award trophies for Australia started. And I'm pleased to tell you that as of this year, with Procreate and Wylde Flowers also bringing back 2 Apple Design Awards, we have a total of 11 Apple Design Awards just for Australia. So again, yeah, thank you. So to put it in context, these are 12 awards each year selected from all around the world. So I'd like to share with you some interesting tidbits you may not know. In 2016, we actually won and brought home 2 Apple Design Awards. And in fact, in the audience tonight is one of the winners from that for the app Streak. Quentin, are you here somewhere? And I'm really pleased to say as well that perhaps more impressively, 2 developers from Australia have actually won design awards twice. I've already mentioned Firemint, right, with Flight Control HD and Real Racing 2. But tonight, one of the speakers from Procreate has actually won it twice as well. First in 2013 and then again this year. And of course, Wylde Flowers joins the winners for this year. All right, one final point before I let the real speakers speak. The really special thing about this year's Apple Design Award was that for Australia, it was actually a clean sweep for the category of inclusivity, as in the app and the game are both from Australia. I think that that's really great. And one of what we like to take an approach to how they've designed and created the apps, and actually to also share a bit about what inclusivity means for them and how they built it into their app. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce to the stage the co-founder and CEO of Procreate, James Kuda.
Thanks, DC. And thanks for having us here tonight. It's nice to be here. We really make an appearance. We're always so busy in Hobart doing our thing. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Procreate, it's a drawing and sketching and painting application that's developed majority for beginners and for professionals. So we've taken a lot of time to really make sure that the program is accessible for people who've just picked up an iPad and started drawing, or for people who are at the highest levels of the creative industry. And when we talk about the highest levels of the creative industry, I'm talking about Disney, Pixar, Marvel. Lots of content you've probably seen around has been made in Procreate. And there's a phrase that we have inside Procreate, which is art is for everybody. And that's something that we really, really, really believe in. It's not like a poster on a wall. It's not a mission statement in a handbook. It's something that we talk about inside Procreate every day, because it's something we really, really believe in. And a good example of that kind of ethos or that aspiration that we're trying to reach is a feature that we developed in Procreate 5.2. Procreate 5.2 was a release we did last year, which was full of features that we're trying to welcome more and more people into the product, because we're all here today to try and learn how we can make our products have more reach. And so we spent a long time trying to figure out, how do we get more people into Procreate? How do we get more people in and welcome them in? And we developed this feature called motion filtering. Motion filtering is a really interesting feature, because when you look at some of the features in iPadOS that are designed for accessibility, if you look at something like VoiceOver, it doesn't quite translate over to something that you need to draw and paint with. So we had to kind of look at this in a totally different light. And we thought, well, how do we help people who are suffering from tremors and motor disorders when they're drawing? How do we help those people to draw just as they intended to draw? And we used something inspired from audio signal processing. And so when the customer's drawing and painting, even if they're shaking, it'll kind of smooth out the peaks and the troughs. And as they're drawing, it happens in real time at 120 frames a second behind the customer. It kind of feels like magic when you're using it. But the really interesting thing was, when we put it out, there was a lot of customers who came back and said, holy shit, you've changed my life. Like, I couldn't do this before. And that is something that's so meaningful. When we get that feedback from our customers, it's a very, very meaningful part of the process. But I think what's more interesting is that when we say art is for everybody, that feature didn't just serve that one particular demographic. we had a lot of professionals from the industry say that's actually really helped me. And I'm one of those guys. Like I'm a lazy guy. I've got my Mac up on my screen and I like to have my iPad on a stand. But using motion filtering, I don't have to be precise. I can be really careless. And so that's a really good example of what we're trying to do. There's many other features that we've done over the years to try and welcome more and more people in. But motion filtering is one of those things that I think hits that level that we're trying to reach where art is for everyone. But I think, you know, there's so much opportunity that we have in the community to try and reach more people. Because when we started the process of looking at how to reach more people, we started off with one particular feature. And what we found was if we can create it in a way that is more welcoming, we're thinking about more people, we get a much bigger reach. But rather than the lofty goals, today I wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the basics, because I think that some of the most important part of our jobs is a good foundation. Because when we have a really good foundation, we can build up on top, and the weight can, you know, the foundation can take that weight. And so we've supported, I think, about 12 to 14 languages over the years. And language support's really interesting because we don't use language support to try and, you know, we don't look at a certain region and think, well, how do we try and reach those people? Because I might be living somewhere else, but my native language might be something different. And so we want these people to feel very welcome when they hit our product. And so we spend a lot of time making sure that basic stuff like labels, you know, we've got different languages that can be quite long and quite short. We also have device orientations when you throw that into the mix. And we have our content, which is infinitely variable. So we spend a lot of time developing our own technology that lays out stuff and takes into consideration how we can accommodate everybody. And if in iOS 16, actually, there's a whole new layout system that you can access with only a couple of lines of code. You don't actually need to write your own layout engine like we did. We spent, I don't know how long, it was like kind of like months writing our own system, but you don't actually need to do that with iOS 16. It's all done for you, which is really, really nice. And I think I just want to finish off again by calling back to the opportunity that we all have, because for me, that's the most exciting part of it, because whether we like it or not, we're shaping in small ways or in sometimes significant ways, people's lives. And I think that is really, really exciting what you're going to do with accessibility and how we can welcome in more and more people into our products. So that's it, guys. A very, very short talk today. Thanks again for having us, and I'll hand back over to TC.
No, stay, please.
I've been told to stay, so.
We know each other really well.
We do.
Questions for James, please. All right, fine, you can go.
Thank you, TC.
We're getting back later for questions after Amanda. So apologies she couldn't be in person here tonight, but we did organize to stream Amanda in live from Melbourne. And of course, Amanda is the co-founder of Studio Drydock and Wylde Flowers. If you haven't tried it, this is a really heartwarming, also described as cozy game that has a pretty special message, actually. So what I'll do is let me just roll a short clip showing you the intro to the movie, and then we will switch the screen to Amanda, and she'll be in this room with us. So let's go ahead, please.
I just love the peace here. I guess that's why I've never moved anywhere else. I saw that spark of magic in your eyes the first time I held you. Honeybee, I'm so glad you came here. Enjoy perfecting your craft, but mind that you don't forget about your regular life. There's magic in the little things too.
On screen.
Can you see me and hear me?
We can now. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for having me there. I really wish I could have been there. But I hope that I'll still be able to tell you a bit about our studio and how we won this. Oh, hang on. That shiny award there. So it really does exist. now I'm going to try and share my screen. And we will see if the magic of everyone over there is actually getting this working. Should I assume this is all working? I hope so.
Just fine. It's really good.
Excellent. Okay, perfect. So I'm Amanda Schofield. I'm Managing Director for Studio Drydock, which is a brand new studio in Melbourne. This is our first game. And I'm also Creative Director for Wylde Flowers, which is the game you just saw a short clip from. It was a bit framey on my end, so I promise you it does run at 30 or 60 frames on devices. So that's just part of building everything into you guys. So the trailer maybe doesn't fully explain what the game is. It's a cozy life sim with a witchy twist. So it's very similar to games like Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley, if you've played any of those. It appeals to people who love Animal Crossing, which has been such a big deal over the last few years in particular. So some of the voice that you heard in the trailer was from Cissy Jones, who is the voice actor that won a BAFTA for Firewatch, a very popular indie game. And the whole cast is just magnificent. We've been very fortunate in bringing in an incredible cast to voice the entire game. So every line of dialogue in the game is voiced. And there's about 18 hours of that. The whole game is around 30 to 60 hours, depending on what systems that you interact with, whether or not you're romancing one of our smoochable characters or whether you're focused on the main story. Also localized into 14 languages in text, just the English for the voiceover. So it's a big game. It's a big game, and it was made for Apple Arcade. So it's available on Mac, on Apple TV, and iPhone and iPad. And it'll be coming to PC, Steam, and Switch later this year. So that's a lot of platforms. It's kind of everywhere, but it's huge. And I think that was something that we really wanted to achieve with mobile, is showing that these days it can do anything that a console can do just as well. So if you haven't played it, I recommend you pick it up. If you have daughters who are, mid-teen and above, I would recommend that you pass it on to them too, because they are definitely the first people we wanted to play the game. So how do we build it? Like I said, we're a brand new studio, and we've built a game, and this game has won an Apple Design Award. So there's a little bit of secret sauce. We don't know exactly where it is, but here's a little bit about it. It's an internal studio of 25 people. So very small internal team for the size of the game that it is. There's about 230 people external that also work on the game. Those are people who do things like icons, all of the localization teams, the quality assurance teams, and our music production and voiceover production. But the internal team built the game. However, the internal team is kind of a bit of a misnomer. We have no brick and mortar office. We're based all over the world, actually, in 5 different countries, from here to the other side of North America. So the whole thing is run fully remote, and I could honestly do an entire presentation just on how we've done that, because I like to tell people we did that before it got cool, and back when it was a terrifying thing for people to try and undertake. So we've had a bit of experience with it, and we've built it from the ground up. We insist that most of our communication is asynchronous. So decisions are made over a 24-hour period so that people have a chance to for their time zone to come around and for them to comment on something, which adds a lot of side benefits that you don't get if you make decisions in a meeting. When we do meet people, it's usually over Google Meet. So we've picked time zones that mean that nobody's kind of online in the middle of the night. And we can just kind of fit everybody into a handful of meetings, but there's almost none of that. It's done through documentation, through asynchronous communication, through Slack. But here's what you want to know. So this is what's behind the game, and a lot of it at face value is pretty standard stuff. So the art tools that we're using are industry standard, and most games are made with similar sets of these. Git with LFS, because assets are pretty massive in our game. Dropbox for the raw assets, just so that we're not passing them around between people all the time because they're huge. Unity itself is running the game, but it's kind of as little of Unity as we could get away with. There's a lot of our own custom code under the hood to handle things like game scripting. The animation system's been replaced. We replaced the renderer, and we'd had to build quite complex structures to handle cinematics and lip sync because it's such a huge part of our game. Everything pretty much is written in C#. Anything that interfaces directly with Apple SDKs is done with Objective-C. So then what I haven't told you yet is that of our 25 people on our team, exactly one of them is a programmer. Just one, built the whole thing. So we rely pretty heavily on continuous integration and automation testing because we just have to keep the tech debt down to pull that off. And we rely on a great deal of tools and very advanced tools for most of our content creation. So for continuous integration, we use GitLab, and automation is run across iOS devices, in particular through iOS deploy. AL tool is interfacing back to test flight, and then everything is written in .NET Core to be cross-platform. Game server stuff is written here. Please, God, don't ask me any questions about the server. The server I know nothing about. Other than that, we kind of use it for support. Customer support is critical to our business and one of the first systems that we build when we're building a game. And then the rest of it is for bug tracking. So one of the things that we rely on pretty heavily is the game scripting system that we wrote. So we wrote a proprietary language for this style of game and for building such a heavy dialogue, cutscene kind of game. So that our engineer didn't have to write large chunks of the game code. That is something that I can take on. So this is an excerpt from our script. We call it plays. So this is just, some dialogue backwards and forwards between two of the characters and basic conditionals to trigger parts of the goals and to trigger cutscenes and things like that. So most of the game, well, the bulk of the game is kind of written in this language. This is our custom UI script, needed to be cross-platform. It's similar-ish to Swift UI, I would say, but otherwise nothing too exciting going on there. This is complex. So as I said, there's 18 hours of dialogue in the game. That's all been voiced. And so that's all lip synced. And there's kind of a complex algorithm that does a first pass on that, and it can often get it wrong and not really look like the right mouth shapes or visemes to go with the sound. So we've built these kinds of tools so that we can fix it up whenever cutscenes are kind of showing that the dialogue is not matching correctly. And then there are 350 cutscenes in the game. So although this might, if you're familiar with Unity, this might look like Unity's cinematics editor, it is definitely just surface deep. Everything under the hood is kind of our custom system. We just kind of needed a bit more oomph from it to kind of get to the level of quality it has. So I guess, so this game won an award. Why did we pick it? We could have built anything. We were a brand new studio. We could have done anything we wanted. And with that in mind, we put together 7 designs at a very high level at the start of the project. And I do that mainly because I get very attached to ideas. So I had 7 beautiful babies and I loved each of them equally, so that that was kind of taken out of the equation and we could just focus on what we thought would be the most effective for the studio. So the one that we chose had to solve kind of 2 problems. One, which is what best represents what we want the studio to stand for. So that could be anything, but what do we feel proud of? What do we want the studio to become known for? And Wylde Flowers was chosen for that reason, as well as what do we actually think we could make. So there's no point in taking on something massive if we didn't think we could achieve it, which is almost exactly what we did, but we did achieve it, so it's okay. Then once we knew that we were building Wylde Flowers, we knew we were building a farming life sim and it was going to have quite a lot of narrative. The next step was, what are we going to do with all that narrative? What story are we going to tell? And so we knew that we wanted to target young women as the primary audience, as underserved audiences is something we focus on as a studio. And so it had to kind of appeal to that audience in a couple of different ways. We really wanted to work on empowerment for young women. It's something that's deeply important to us as a studio. So that was why we kind of landed on witchcraft, because witchcraft is something that throughout history has empowered, or the concept of witchcraft has empowered women. However, there's a flip side to that, which is that throughout history and in almost every culture in the world, prejudice has been focused on people who practice witchcraft, or people who are perceived to have practiced witchcraft and actually were just really good healers. So that was an interesting concept to us as well, because we really wanted to be able to tell a story that mattered to the world, that was relevant or resonant with current events, if not directly tackling them, at least putting people in the mindset. And so prejudice is something that we should all be thinking about. And we wanted to kind of take it and pull it apart in a way that people could approach it, even if they personally maybe hadn't experienced it in the way that many of us do. And so, yeah, so the concept that we kind of landed on, farming life sim, cozy witch game for young women, and targeting complex issues like prejudice through witchcraft, was just the perfect fit for all of our goals. But really what you want to know, I think, is how did we land an inclusivity award for the ADAs? And I've thought about that a lot. How did we get there? And I think it actually starts back at the beginning. So coming up with a game vision is a concept that isn't any different to making an app. You have to figure out, what is your game or app? What is the center of it, and what isn't in it? Because that's how you get to a finish line, is knowing where the boundary is. So coming up with a vision is kind of a really critical part of any project. It's how everybody pulls in the same direction. They all understand that we're trying to achieve this one goal. And for a team like ours, where we're fully distributed, it's kind of even more important. The bigger the team is, the more important the message is as well. So a lot of work is put into that idea. And if you do it right, it becomes an earwig that kind of lives in people's brains rent-free. And if you do it really well, then they start saying it in rooms that you're not in. And that's how you know that it's resonating with your team. The problem with that is that if, say, right at the end, you say to yourself, you know what? We should make this game really diverse. We should try to appeal to as many different people as possible. I want them all to be able to see themselves in the game. It's very hard to wrench away from your original concepts, because the whole machine has been operating trying to achieve that goal. And so suddenly there's a second goal. It's never going to be as important as the first one was. So if diversity and inclusivity is something that you want to target, it's something you need to build in at the start. And if you do it, then it becomes a part of every conversation. Wait a minute, how are people going to use this? Are the right people in this conversation? Are we representing this culture in an understanding way? Or do we have enough experience to be able to represent that culture? So that I think is a critical piece. And that also kind of comes into, the more inclusive you want to be and the more diverse you want to be, the more likely it is that the user that you're targeting for that diversity or inclusivity is not in the room. Even if you have some representation there, it's very hard to kind of be everything that represents a culture. So getting the user in the room is even more important, and doing it as often as possible. So we do that through a lot of play testing. We did quite a lot of cultural consultancy when we were building the characters and the script. But finding more ways to bring more people in to see your product as early as possible becomes pretty critical. And I've also, so this orange box is showing you my studio mission statement. This is taken directly from our website. So it's one of the first things you learn about Studio Drydock if you look us up. And if we put out a job ad, it's in every job ad. And the reason that we do that is because one of the things that it says is that we are building games for underserved audiences. And these are people that want to see themselves in the games that they play and their heritage. So before you even get to work on the game, before you even get into the studio, you understand that diversity and inclusivity is something that we're targeting. It's something that's really important to us. So when you get there and the prototype is playing around with how to present pronouns, or we're putting in new kinds of characters and playing around with skin tones and trying to get that look right. It's just an extension of what you already knew or already assumed on the way in. And that's kind of how fundamental I think inclusivity can be in a company. And unfortunately, I don't have any quick ideas about how to make this your next product win the next design award. But I think it's probably a good chance to think of the old adage that the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. But if not 10 years ago, then right now. So if you evolve your culture and your team sees that from the very top levels, people are talking about this and it's important to them and it's important to the product and it's important to the company, then it's kind of a natural evolution that you will head in the right direction and you'll get there. So that's kind of a whirlwind tour of Studio Drydock and Wylde Flowers. I hope you will check it out on Apple Arcade. And I assume we will take questions.
Thank you, Amanda. The level of depth that the stories you heard tonight into how they created their apps is truly amazing. And what I'd like to do now is to take a couple of questions, but I'll kick it off first. And I want to start by maybe sharing this thought with you. This could be you. You've already achieved the first part, which is you're based in Australia. Apparently that helps. The next part is these guys. So have a think about your questions for them, but I will start with one which you might have thought about too. And I might start with James, but maybe Amanda, you can follow on afterwards. The question is, how did you get started? And why did you build your first app?
It's a good question. The long story, I'll try and condense it down to a few minutes. I had a little branding agency years ago, and it was only about 4 or 5 people. And at that time, I was kind of frustrated because I was doing work for clients and I really didn't enjoy that process. Nothing wrong with that process. It just wasn't for me. And pretty much overnight, I had a snap decision when I saw that Apple had reached the iPad, and I closed the company down. I had to let some people go, and I started a new company called Savage Interactive. It had no business plan, didn't even have a product. It was 2 people, myself and my wife, who were incredibly excited about the trajectory of multi-touch and the device itself, because there was nothing else before that, right? Like every other mobile device then had like fans, the battery life would be minutes. So for us, we were just really convinced that that was the next kind of platform jump. Shortly after that, because I like to draw and paint, I'm not very good at it, but I enjoy it. That was the first kind of step forward that we thought, well, creative tools haven't really evolved, kind of been stuck in 1980 for years. And what could a creative tool look like if it was human first? And so we started the journey then. We built a very, very early prototype on OpenGL. So it was the first graphically accelerated painting app. And that was a leap of faith. This whole thing was a leap of faith. We had no idea if it was going to work. We finished Procreate after about 18 months, put it on the App Store, and only got a small amount of sales for a long time. But we kept updating. We kept listening to the community. We kept building a community. That was a big part of how we got to where we are now. We're the #1 best-selling paid app in the world for a couple of years in a row. And I think the reason is our community. We spent a lot of time working with our community. And that process has kind of gone along. We haven't changed. Our revenue's gone up. Our people have, we've increased in size dramatically, but the core is still the same. We didn't get into this to make money. I know that sounds weird, but Walt Disney had a really good saying, which I like, where it was, we make money to make movies. We don't make movies to make money. And we feel exactly the same. That's kind of our ethos. We don't really look at charts and numbers. We use our gut and we put the customer at the center of everything. So it's been a long journey. It's a very condensed answer, TC.
That's a great answer. Thank you for sharing that. Same question to you, Amanda, please.
Right. Well, I was always going to build video games. I think basically from high school onwards, it was something that was passionate for me. And I was actually part of the company that Firemint, who won all those beautiful shiny awards, ended up merging with. So Iron Monkey and Firemint became Fire Monkeys. So I was part of the Iron Monkey side of that. And I was very fortunate enough to end up working on The Sims Free Play, which was the first mobile free-to-play version of The Sims. It was going to be a quick project, a couple of updates, and then we were going to move on to something else. And I think I did 55 updates by the time I left the company. It was huge and hundreds of millions of people had played it. But what I learned was a lot about the kind of players who play The Sims, and it's a very diverse audience on every platform, and anywhere that it exists, it's an incredible product built by an incredible team over at Maxis, and we were fortunate enough to be trusted with that. And I learned a lot about underserved audiences. People, I mean, The Sims is huge, and everybody you know has heard of it, and everybody you know has somebody who knows somebody who's played it, usually their wives or their daughters. So I wanted so much more of that for people, because those were the games that I was addicted to and just couldn't put down. And it's so rare that those kind of games are given love and attention and support in the industry. And I wanted to use all of the contacts that I'd been developing to kind of take a studio in that direction and to focus on that. And Apple saw what we were doing and said, we want to help. And so that's why we ended up on Arcade, published by Apple. And yeah, so glad we did.
Oh, thank you. And The Sims is one of my favorite games as well from that time period. I think one of my takeaways listening to both of those stories is a very clear vision and decision that it is time to take this calculated risk and to do something you really believe in. But anyway, enough about me. Do we have any questions whilst we have James and Amanda here?
Okay. Thank you both of you for great talks. So I have 2 questions, one to Amanda, one to James. So maybe I'm going to start with Amanda. First of all, congrats on your award. And you mentioned in your talk that you did some research to serve to all the groups that can engage with the app. So can you give us a little bit more insight how the process looks like to serve anyone who can just play into this game?
Yeah, for sure. So about a year in was when we kind of had the first version of the game. It was hideous. All our people were jelly beans. Half of the environments were empty, but that was how early we needed to start getting it into people's hands. And so we built kind of concentric circles of players. We start with friends and family, because those are the safe people. Actually, no, we started before the friends and family. We started with other game developers, because other game developers are used to looking at games that are that early in production and were able to kind of see where you're headed with it and give you feedback on that. So we started with that group, then we moved out further, friends and family who, you know, at least softened the blow before we hit actual players. And we were garnering as many playtest groups as we could throughout the course of the game. But then when we started writing dialogue in earnest and started building the character Bibles, we built something like 150 pages of character Bible across the 30 characters that are in the game. We started bringing in cultural consultants for anyone that we didn't feel like we had the right or the history to kind of represent well. So they came in to look at the character Bibles and then came in again to look at the scripts when we started building the scripts. And then the other thing that we did is wherever possible, all of the actors are representative of the people that they're playing. And so we gave them free rein to say, you know, if this is wrong, tell us. Or if you want to build the character more in a direction that you're more familiar with. And so the person who plays Kai, who's native to Hawaii, he had a lot of language that he was used to using, having grown up there. And so he just built it all into the script. And so there's all these words I had to look up when I was trying to do the dialogue translations to try and figure out what did that mean? What did he just say? It sounded great and I get it, but so yeah, it was kind of layered and every process to try and make sure that we were pulling voices in.
Great. So quick follow-up. So I was wondering, so you said there are a lot of people working remotely for a studio, right? So do you consult with other members of the company? Do you, if the thing that you're trying to implement is good and if they feel inclusive in this solution, how do you deal with the feedback inside, not from outside of the company?
So when you're running a fully remote company, the problem is that, and anyone who's worked with a remote office will also know this, it's very hard to maintain relationships without face-to-face. People are just designed to build relationships in person. So the culture of the studio that we protect most fiercely is that basically everybody on the team is a cheerleader for everyone else on the team. So we do all of our art reviews over Slack. And if you've ever been a young starting out artist, the last thing you want to do is for the first time share a piece of art with a group of people that you barely know. So the culture, the whole culture all the way down is, I just want you to succeed. I just want to see wonderful things from you. And so we've built on that and we've built on that, and all of our art is shared. All of our designs are shared, all of our system mechanics. There are no secret channels in Slack. Everybody can see everything and comment on everything. And when you do that right, and when you get the right culture where everybody feels like you just have my best interests at heart, then it's easy to go from there to accept this one thing, which is, you know, coming from an Asian background, I feel like this kind of like highlight in Kai's hair is a stereotype and it makes me uncomfortable. Like, get it, totally get it. We can do something else there. So there was a lot of that through the process as well.
Great, thank you. So can I have extra questions? Okay. So again, congrats for ADA again.
Thanks, mate.
I was thinking about if you ever had a moment where somebody, some artists reach out to you and said that, oh, it's because of Procreate. You enabled me to develop a new career, because as a kid, I really liked to just draw some stuff, and later I just stopped it for some reason. I don't know why, you know, adulthood and all that stuff. But later, when I got iPad and I purchased Procreate, I noticed that I doing more drawings, even though I'm pretty bad at it, but still, it's a process that I really like. And also, I see on Instagram that you publish a lot of artists that are doing great art with Procreate. So the question is, do you have anyone who developed their career thanks to Procreate? Of course, it's just a tool, even though it's a wonderful tool.
Yeah.
But if there is anyone that you can share with us.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for your support, man. I appreciate that. Yes, there is a number of stories. There's a whole bucket of them. There's one that stands out in particular to me. It's one of the oldest stories. I don't know if you guys remember, but a little while ago, there was a portrait of Morgan Freeman that was painted in such high fidelity that people thought it was fake, that it didn't happen. And the reason was back then, there was no tool that had time lapse. And so people didn't understand what they were seeing. They had no idea that we'd built in 4K resolution into Procreate with high resolution brushes. So that artist, Kyle Lambert, he got a lot of notoriety from that. That video went viral to like 13 million and it was on CBS and stuff. It turned out it was a great move for him and for us because he got a lot of notoriety. And as a result of that, he broke into the industry. So he comes from the UK and he ended up migrating to LA. And so you've probably all seen Stranger Things or maybe not all the seasons, but all the posters and art, that's Kyle. And he's been doing that in Procreate. And there's lots of stories like that. They never really get old, to be honest with you, because that makes me get up in the morning. You know what I mean? When we're really having an impact like that, and I still read all the feedback, maybe not all of it, but I try and read as much as I can. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Well, actually, time is of essence. So just a couple of things. There is more of this kind of advice and inspiration in interviews that we conducted in preparation for the Apple Design Awards from all of the finalists. So if you go to developer.apple.com and follow the links through to the Apple Design Awards, you hear James speak there as well as Amanda. In fact, two of my favorite comments were from them in that video. Please check that out. Of course, James is here in person and will be hanging around a bit, but there's still more to come this evening. So at this time, I'd like to hand back to Zach, or should we go straight to Gavin? All right. So we're just going to set up real quick. In fact, let's just do it now.
Cool. All right, we're almost at the end of the night. So thank you to everyone for coming out tonight. It's been a huge event. There's a lot going on this month with WWDC, and it's very exciting that we've had all of the great talks that we have. So firstly, yeah, thank you to everyone for coming. A huge thank you to Safety Culture for the venue. I think we can all agree this is a really, really nice space for a meetup. Yeah, thanks for hosting us to Safety Culture. A round of applause for them. Thank you. A huge thank you to the panel as well. I think the answers were really insightful, really helpful, and thanks for some of the great questions as well from the audience. A big thank you to Amanda and James, who are Apple Design Award winners. Congratulations again on the Apple Design Award. And a really big thank you for sharing some insights with us tonight. We really appreciate it. It's very cool that we've had that opportunity. And of course, a big thank you to Apple and the technology evangelists for coming out, having the fireside chat, and for all of the insights that they were able to share with the recent APIs. Thank you. Cool. So we hope to see you all next month. Stay tuned on the meetup page for the announcement of that event. But we'll be on the third Thursday, back to normal for that. And that's all I have. So I hope everyone gets home safely. We do need to leave the venue as quickly as possible at the conclusion of this. So if I could ask everyone to start making your way to the exits once we're done. So thanks again, and we'll see you next month.